Alright, again, Shalom, Shalom. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Makakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders, great millstone, for teaching us his truth, and citations to the sincere Akim and Aquath of listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Rukwai. I'm back in here with another quick and Lord's will, as always, an edifying lesson. And for today's lesson, I'm going to be going through a short conversation I had. So the title I have on the screen is My Conversation with an Israelite from Eritrea, right? So I was having a conversation essentially with this, essentially he's a Jake. He looks kind of more like a Hamite, but he's from this really small, tiny country in Eastern Africa known as Eritrea. And essentially what he's, just for edification, I kind of wanted to pull it up because I didn't know too much about it, to be honest with you. So it's this really, really tiny country here, and just north of Ethiopia, and very close to Saudi. So just a little bit of backstory. I was having this conversation with this. Looks kind of like Nipsey Hussle, the rapper. Beard, slightly Hamitic features, but he's an Israelite, right? Anyways, having this conversation, he recently had moved here. He spent some time living in Saudi. He's originally from Eritrea. He lived in Saudi for a few years. He speaks Arabic, and he moved out here. All right, so as we were talking, he was telling me, he said, this country, is not what people might think it is. So I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, from abroad, when you look at countries and when you look at the West, you're saying how, man, when you look at the countries in the West, they perpetuate this image. And perpetuate this image that everything is everything is decent. The streets are paved with gold. The sun is always shining. There's money growing on the trees. The women are always half naked. I mean, that part is probably true, to be honest with you. But he was telling me a lot about the image of what he noticed, being from abroad and then actually coming here. And then seeing that, essentially, he's realizing that, countries like the America and Canada, countries in the West, they ain't shit, basically, to sum it all up. He's noticing that, this, it's not what people might think it is. There's a lot of decay. Something I've also been noticing recently. There's a huge homelessness problem, being growing. Essentially, I've noticed it, in different parts of like Montreal, for example, and even here in Toronto. A huge growing homelessness problem, and this situation is continuing to essentially grow. But back to essentially the conversation, in the spirit, he's lamenting because he's realizing, man, this is, he thinks, when people think about countries like America and Canada from a distance, from a foreigner's perspective, if they haven't never been here, they think that everything, it's kind of like the 50s, white picket fence. You get you a nice white wife that cooks apple pies for you, and the smell of the apple pie is traveling down the street, and you could pull up in your nice Cadillac, and that's the image that a lot of these foreigners get, especially from a lot of us Israelites in the Caribbean and South America and Central America. But then noticing when you come here and you realize how expensive everything is, the groceries, the so-called BS multiculturalism, noticing a huge influx of Indians, Elamites coming in here, and even noticing little You're constantly working. The food's not, the food is of poor quality. The weather is not that great, and so on and so forth. When they come here, they realize they're honestly being enchanted by that image that Babylon constantly perpetuates. We slightly talked about a little bit about his experience with women and all that kind of stuff, because in his culture there's a sense of essentially being modest and being chaste, right? As a matter of fact, let me go to that. I'm just recalling bits and pieces of the conversation, so just bear with me. This is 1 Timothy 2 verse 9, and it says, "In the manner also that women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with shamefacedness and sobriety, and not with broided hair or gold or pearls or costly array." So he's drawing comparisons in between noticing how the women are here and then noticing how women are essentially back in his own country, and even back in Saudi, because he lived in Saudi for a long time. And countries like Saudi Arabia is a very, very quote unquote more traditional. They adhere to more of that standard of women being in order. They're covered up, their hair is covered, they're essentially you barely see their face. They're starting to slowly sip on that Babylonian wine, because there was an incident recently, I think, of a woman. I think she was in a university in Iran. Was it Iran? I believe it was Iran. I'm not sure if it was Iran or Saudi, one of the two. I believe it was Iran. But essentially she stripped down naked. you know and authorities had to get involved. But the point really is, he's drawing comparisons, and this happens to a lot of our people when they come to countries here in the West. They notice there's a sharp contrast to what they were sold on TV versus how when they come here they realize how basically how uh, 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 decadent this lifestyle is. It's filled, as a matter of fact, let me get that word, decadent. It's filled with decay. It's filled with low morals. Decadent. Okay, decadent in the etymology, it says in a state. Okay, here, decadent in the etymology, it says in the state of decline or decay from a former condition of excellence. So it shows you, how the empire, and this is actually one of the last few stages when you notice an empire is about to fall. It shows in in how the women are seen. It shows in the kinds of music. It shows in the abundance and of entertainment, the quality of the lyrics. The lyrics are very, very sexual and essentially overt. It's very satanic. It shows you that which is then is now, because Rome was falling in the exact same patterns, right? The political instability, the devaluing of the dollar, and so on and so forth, the influx of all these different migrants that are coming into this country. And you're seeing that the same thing that is happening back then in Rome is happening right now in Babylon, right? So so going back to the point, because I was just talking about the women, it just to, in a nutshell, noticing the difference and the decline, and how this place is, when you realize that, man, this Babylonian wine I was drinking from was made with sour grapes. He's basically sobering up, and it's the same thing that's as a matter of fact, let me get it. Just bear with me. Jeremiah 51 verse 7, and it says, Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord Yahweh's hand, that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad, right? So this is why a lot of these countries, especially in the East, like Russia and China, Iran, Saudi, a lot of these BRICS nations, they have a very strong disdain for countries like America because of the philosophies, that wine that they're pushing upon those other countries. A good example was I don't know if it was this year, I believe it was last year, when Kamala Harris, when she was traveling around a bunch of different countries in Africa, and she was essentially trying to get them to get on board with the alphabet agenda, the alphabet lifestyle, right? And that didn't fly too well with countries like Uganda and Ghana, because they're kind of more in their right mind into shunning those philosophies, those ways of life, right? So the point here is a lot of these countries in the East shun that lifestyle because they realize it's having a negative effect on their people. It's having a negative effect on their children, right? One of the things he told me as well, also I will share with you, is that they, and there in Eritrea, he was telling me how his father had two wives. So polygamy is very, very common there, as well as his father had passed, and he was telling me how in our culture, if the moms, the wives, if the husband passes, she doesn't remarry. I thought it was very interesting too, because they seem to hold on to a lot of Israelite culture there, like for example, like the polygamy and so on and so forth. And it made me, when he said that to me, I think it reminded me about Judith, right? Because in her story, I believe she didn't remarry, right? But it just goes to show there's more of a respect for what's the word, for the patriarchy, so to speak. And then there is an acceptance of a man having multiple wives. That's not something that is seen as taboo, or it's seen as something that is kind of shunned. And a lot of these practices and Israelite customs, so to speak, our culture is kind of shunned in Babylon. Things that are promoted in Babylon would be like your sexual liberation and women over the man and so on and so forth, feminism, right? That is what's perpetuated in this country, in Babylon especially, right? So verse 8, and it says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain, if so she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her. Let us go let us go every one into his own country. For her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies, right? So it shows you the state of of this country, right? It's dwindling. It's fallen, and it's fallen by far. When it comes to morals, there is a lack of morals that occurs in this society, right? So that's kind of something I wanted to share in regards to this conversation I had with Israelite. As a matter of fact, let me go back to Eritrea. Just bear with me on this, just for edification, because a lot of them are Israelites, right? Jake. Jake has scattered them on all people, right? right? So just images here. A lot of them might look like so-called Ethiopians, but a lot of them are Israelites. Okay, let me get Sirach. 1 second. Okay, Sirach 42:11, and it says, "Keep a watch over a shameless daughter, lest she make thee a laughingstock in thy enemies, and a byword in the city, and a reproach among the people, and make thee ashamed before the multitude." Right. So essentially, that's kind of what's going on, with a lot with the women that are here. It's essentially she's a laughing stock. And America kind of, if you really think about this precept really spiritually as well, America kind of embodies that laughing stock sentiment, because it's a nation that kind of is a whore, and this is a country that is not taken seriously. And what shows is you see that in the election, that passed a couple weeks ago, right? And you see that in the election with this constant bickering back and forth about Trump and Kamala and so on and so forth, and even the amount of entertainment that was pushed for a lot of you Israelites to endorse these candidates, right? Mostly on Kamala's side, right? Not as saying that Trump is righteous, but the point is that it shows the types of people that are running this country, and it's a country that is not taken very, very seriously. It's a country that people look at this country and they're like, this is are these the people that are supposed to be the so-called leaders of the free world? They have the biggest military and so on and so forth. They allow transformers to be in their military. This is the kind of vibration that they push, and a lot of countries are fighting back at this because they realize, man, we don't want this vibration, we don't want this wine spilling into our nation and corrupting our children and corrupting our military and corrupting our families. We don't want this here, right? So this is what a lot of these nations are waking up and realizing. They're starting to sober up because they realize that wine that they were probably partaking in, they realized it was made with sour grapes, and they realized, in goodness, man, that wine is so bitter. Why did I try and sip on that, right? And that's why a lot of these nations are really upset and mad at America, right? So, let's let me go to, where is it? It's like here. This is Titus 2 verse 5, and it says I start at verse 4, and it says that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, and the word of the Most High be not blasphemed, right? And that shows, you see that, more, you see a more, like when we were speaking, you see that more prevalent within their culture. There's a strong presence, for order, and a reverence for the father, right? And there's a reverence for the family unit, starting off with the father, of course, right? And when he talked about it, I thought it was very, very interesting, because and when you contrast that with Babylon, Babylon, essentially, when you look at the media on TV, you look at it and it's like, damn, man, there is no reverence for manhood. There's no reverence for good male role models, and it shows in the media as well, because when you look at TV and sitcoms and cartoons, the father or the head of the household is always some bumbling idiot. He doesn't know his right hand from his left foot, he doesn't possess any proper and sound judgment, right? And when you look at the roles of what the women subscribe to, because of these musicians, they don't subscribe to this type of mindset of actually caring for their children. They're more likely to, off their children, if you catch what I'm saying, right? And in his culture, there is more reverence to them to do that, because something he also shared with me was, he said that the women, if the women, for example, like women that are young, if they leave the country and they go and they move away and they come back, or they go on vacation to countries like America or Canada and they come back, men won't deal with them. I thought it was very interesting that he said that, because it mentions the word chaste in this precept. Is it verse 5? It mentioned the word chaste, because you don't realize, a lot of women, and they get exposed to this kind of lifestyle, they get corrupted. And that's the same word he used. He doesn't the men there, they won't deal with the women that are what's the word I'm looking for, that are quote unquote corrupted, because they move away, because they think that they get pimped out, they get they get ran through. And that's very common, in Babylon. Right? That's why Babylon is described as a whore. So anyways, that's pretty much it. I'm trying to just recall bits and pieces from our conversation. I guess I'll just end off with this one here. Let's go to Proverbs 31. Okay, I'll start at verse 10, and it says, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. Her heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that she shall have no need of spoil. She will do to him good, and no evil of the days of her life. She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like merchant ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She riseth, and while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens." Right? So it just shows you the diligence and the skills that a good woman would have, right? And that's something that women tend to have more in his culture, when they're there. But when they come out here, it's kind of mostly just about them and them only. There's no reverence for the man, and there's no reverence for the father, and so on and so forth, right? So just kind of just recalling bits and pieces of the conversation, like trying to put it together, right, and make it, hopefully, that it be edifying, right? So anyways, I guess I'll just leave it there. I don't want to ramble on too long. But hopefully this video was edifying. Just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. Until next time, I say Shalom.